This is Rude Tudors, hosted by English Renaissance expert Liz Rodriguez and nerdy laywoman Nicole Keating. Join our raunchy jaunt through the historical and the hysterical as we explore the weirdness of the past and its presence in the present. There have been lots of think pieces recently, probably not even just recently, over the past 10 years or so, about the kids these days and how they date.
Yes.
Or rather, how they don't date.
Yes, I have read many a trend piece.
So how do they date? Like, what do they do?
They don't.
They don't?
Well, I feel like, at least according to all of the trend pieces, the whole thing is they're talking about a lot of, hookup culture. And basically, is it good for boys? Is it good for girls? Is it good for anybody? But it basically allows you to, especially among, the college set, and it's, a lot of meet somebody at a party or know somebody from class, kind of have a crush on them, go to a party, make out with them, either sleep with them, maybe not go all the way. There's a lot of different things that might happen in the realm of hookup, and everybody sort of defines it differently.
Yeah.
But the point is, it's the sexual fulfillment without the romantic attachment.
Ooh, that's a nice little nugget of a definition.
Well,
sexual fulfillment without the emotional attachment, a romantic attachment.
Yeah.
So,
and responsibilities.
And the responsibilities, and the follow-up.
Yeah.
A lot of times the follow-up. And I remember when I was in college, somebody telling me that she had hooked up with someone we knew. I remember asking her, what do you mean by hook up?
Yeah,
and I think that's part of the utility of the phrase, is that you don't have to define it, so you don't have to out yourself, especially as a woman, to your friends.
Yeah, as a virgin or not virgin.
Yeah, yeah. Because I think for some people, hooking up is just...
It's a catch-all. It really is. It can mean making out at a party.
Yeah.
It can mean fully sleeping with them. It can mean sleeping with them multiple times over the course of several... you can still use the singular, oh yeah, we hooked up. Mm-hmm. Not we hooked up for a while.
Yeah.
But we hooked up can be also a long or short duration. Yeah. It can be a one-night stand. It can be...
So it's temporally dispersed, perhaps. Yeah, it could be discrete, could be over time.
Yeah, and so it's also, I think that term specifically is also a way to keep labels at bay, as far as...
calling somebody a slut?
Calling somebody a slut, calling somebody a boyfriend or a girlfriend.
Yeah.
Calling somebody anything, any person, calling somebody a douchebag or an asshole because they don't follow up. You don't need to do that if there's no expectation of follow up.
Interesting. So it's a label that kind of shuts down all the other labels. Mm-hmm. Hooking up in and of itself is enough of a descriptor. Mm-hmm. So, fun fact, people hooked up during the Renaissance.
What?
I know. Shocking. So today we're going to talk about bundling.
Sweet.
There actually is a complicated history between the European-style bundling and the American-style bundling, because there's lots of documentary evidence for the American-style bundling. But the European stuff is a little bit more dispersed. So, let's start by actually defining it, and then we'll start breaking it down a little bit continentally. I like to refer to bundling as intimate courting. That's actually not my phrase. I don't think.
That's nice. I think it's a warm, fuzzy term.
Intimate courting. I almost said cuddling, but it is kind of intimate cuddling. In England, we're looking at this...
Oh, I know exactly what it is.
What is it?
It's the time before the first time you hook up with somebody.
Yeah.
You invited them back to your place to watch
Netflix.
a DVD. And you're sitting on the futon watching Netflix, and you're cuddling in the dark, and you're almost making out, but you're not yet.
No, you're bundling.
You're bundling. That's exactly what it is. Oh my God, that shit's exciting. That's erotic.
It's really exciting. It's really fun. There's all of that potential there, electricity.
It's so fun.
You're watching something funny or scary on Netflix. So we should do think pieces about modern bundling practices amongst the youths. At its very most basic definition, at its most innocent, it referred to people lying clothed in bed. It was socially sanctioned and probably parentally, if not condoned, at least
you kids go do what you do.
Ignored, strategically ignored. And it was part of the courtship ritual. And I think that's what's important to know that's different than the hookup culture of today, is you can hook up with anyone today without it necessarily being a part of a courtship. We're going to be boyfriend, girlfriend. Yes. But back in the day, and we're talking about like the 17th and 18th centuries in England, it's part of the road to marriage. And you shouldn't be doing it if you're not on that road.
And I would say that in contemporary times, thinking about those things, those moments of like, we're sitting on the couch, we're watching a DVD, we haven't made out yet, we're just talking about like life, the universe, and everything. Yep. Like those conversations, those are the ones that you have not with somebody that you just want to hook up with.
Yeah.
Those are the moments that you have still in contemporary culture with people that you end up dating, if not long term, at least for like a couple months.
Yeah.
You know, there's something more.
There's something more intimate about it.
Yeah, it still is courtship.
Yeah, it's a step of intimacy above just the regular old hooking up. So this is what the youths were doing, if not during Tudor England, because we kind of play fast and loose with that, but we're talking about the 17th and 18th centuries, times when people would have remembered the Tudors. People disagree about just how widespread this practice was, because intuitively, if you think about who would have been allowed to bundle, it would be people who didn't have a lot to lose by possibly getting pregnant. While it wasn't supposed to be a part of bundling, sometimes might have been a part of bundling. Some people think it was the propertyless people, the kind of the lower classes who do it, but there is some evidence that even middle class people or the upper classes would engage in some level of bundling, and there are different levels of bundling. So we talked about just the clothed, lying in bed together. Sometimes later on it was, we're going to sit on the couch, so it does really feel modern in that sense.
Yeah, it does.
Watch the fire together. In some of its instantiations, especially elsewhere in Europe, in Northwest Europe, you may have been half naked if you were bundling. Yeah, half naked cuddling. And in America, that's where we have a lot more evidence for this happening. Yeah. And this is the Puritan version. And that's what's so crazy about bundling, is that the Puritans condoned it. They were the ones doing it, encouraging youths to do it. But they would put a board between the couple. Right. Like in
that's
a kind of medieval.
That I found out about. Yeah. That's crazy.
Put a board. And even John Adams, 1761, he said, I cannot wholly disapprove of bundling.
Oh,
so he did it with Mrs. Adams. Who was Mrs. Adams? I only know Abigail Adams from 1776. Yeah. John Adams probably bundled with Abigail.
In the movie, Abigail Adams is Laura Linney. That was the first answer I was going to give you. Who was that? Who was Mrs. Adams? Laura Linney. I was like, no, she means her actual name.
Whoops. So this is a great American tradition. Yeah. So it was probably the Puritans who, however they were doing it over in England, when they brought it over to the colonies,
they made it a little bit more extreme.
More extreme, topless, but bored.
Yeah.
To keep everything where
there has to be some element of sexually shaming involved in any element of sexuality there.
This isn't Woodstock, they said. It's not the 1960s, okay? It's the 1660s, and we need to
keep that shit on lock.
Keep those knickers knitted up. So we do have some evidence for what was going on in Wales. And in Wales, they were said to keep, quote, an essential part of his dress. The man was supposed to keep an essential part of his dress. I think that means his pants on.
Probably. He has to keep his pants on. That's old time speak for, keep your pants on.
Keep it in your pants.
Keep it in your pants.
And then women had their under petticoat, quote, fastened at the bottom by a sliding knot, unquote.
So you were tied into your dress.
You were tied into your dress, but it's just a knot.
Yeah, it's not like it's actually gonna...
No, like where there's a will, there's a way.
Oh yeah. Well, I picture like what they're talking about is like when you take a skirt and pull it up through the top and then knot it in front, so your legs are still sticking out, so you look sort of like Aladdin.
Oh, so you've got harem pants.
Yeah, you got harem pants
made
like a
big
big
old
drop
skirt.
crotch. Yeah.
But the petticoat, that makes me think that it's some sort of undergarment. Under petticoat. So like probably what you're describing, but with the underdress by a sliding knot. But it's not like a chastity belt.
No,
it's not like a lock.
It's not even a board.
No, it's not even a board.
There ain't that much there. You'll feel a little poke coming through, is what I'm saying.
Not enough fabric in the world. Could stop this. In theory, if not in fact, people were... This was supposed to prevent penetrative intercourse while people were, getting to know each other on the road to marriage. So a big question that scholars grapple with is why? Why would these various cultures in Northwest Europe and in the U.S., colonial United States, adopt this practice, which to our modern minds seems like a pretty, if not progressive, kind of liberal in the general sense, like a liberal thing to let your kids to do in your own house. Like the parents will go to bed and you kids can stay out here on the couch.
Maybe it's maybe there's a thought of like, well, they're gonna do it anyway.
Yeah.
And so why not in my home? If they're gonna do it somewhere, just have it.
I'd rather them do it at home.
Do it at home, right? And maybe also even just to prevent people from getting crazy and going and getting married to somebody without their parents' permission, just to bone down.
Yeah,
you know,
we never see that happen anymore.
No,
people never get married just to
bone
have
down.
Sex.
No, never happens. Not at all. Never seen it happen.
But back then,
yeah. But if young people, especially if you're not talking about people who are really restricted by class and status and eyes watching them, if we're talking about sort of like middle class, upper middle class, anybody, like people who wouldn't necessarily be sacrificing a title, but might be just like rich marrying rich. Because you're not bound by these other things, there seem to be fewer rules surrounding their relationships and what kind of relationships they could have. So maybe even in an attempt to say like, hey, we're not going to let you date that guy, but we'll let you bundle with this guy. You know, like
so it's like throwing them a bone, so to speak.
Yeah, or even just like an attempt to control them just a little bit. You know, like I think control.
Yeah, it's a way of allowing guiding a relationship, like giving them an inch so that they don't take a mile, giving them a little bit of permissiveness that you sign off on so that they don't go buck wild behind the millinery with the milkmaid. Whatever they did.
Yes.
Whatever they did. Well, the whatever and the wherever in particular I think is interesting, the wherever, because this was in your own home, this was in in your own bed, on the couch. And I was thinking about, like, what do we have any modern analogs for this kind of behavior where there are these spaces where you're not going to get up to everything, but you're going to get up to some stuff?
Oh, yes.
Yeah. So, let's talk about this for a little bit, because it actually, I think it really resonates.
It does.
Because you kind of bundle like old-timey style in the backseat of a car.
Oh, yeah, in the backseat of a car, for sure.
In a movie theater.
But
do people do it in the movie theater anymore? I feel like that's a little old school.
That's a little old school.
Like, that's a little Grease. Did they do that in Grease?
I think so, probably. I don't know. Like at the drive-in movie theater, I think people still make out at the movie theater, but I don't think they go, like, buck wild.
Yeah.
Maybe some, like, high school students get finger banged in the movie theater, but...
at the midnight showing of
Guardians of the Galaxy or something.
4 weeks after it's come out.
Yeah.
Well, here's another one, and I think that this is actually the closest analog I could think of, is your friend's parents' basement.
Yep, that's exactly what I was going to say.
Yeah?
Yeah. Like, or even your own basement. Or where it's like... or family room or wherever is closed off, you know? Like
where you hang out with your friends when your parents are home, but they kind of stay out.
Yeah,
maybe they'll bring you some snacks.
Yeah.
Can you imagine like bringing old-timey Renaissance snacks? Like, I've brought some mincemeat pies. What else did they eat?
I don't know.
I only know what they ate at the Renaissance fair. Like, here's some cheese fritters.
here's some large dill pickles.
Turkey leg.
Just
here's a
bread
bowl.
Most sensual food.
So you'd bread bowls. You'd bring your stewed lampreys. Your mincemeat pies, your whatever sort of Renaissance-y, your tarts.
Ales.
And then mom would leave. So these are spaces that we still have today that I think bundling was part and parcel of back in the day. You know, we need some unsupervised time together to really know if we're going to be companionate, if we're a good match for each other.
I think we're talking about sort of necessity shorter durations, because we're not thinking necessarily about getting married at 16, you know, but in a day when that was par for the course, that was the age you got married at. between 16 and 21, 22.
Well, that's what's interesting about this period is people are actually starting to get married a little bit later.
A little later, yeah.
Yeah, especially,
you're not 13 anymore.
Yeah, if you don't have any money, you've got to work to earn that money to put your household together. So men especially are getting married later. And so you have decreased bastardy levels, decreased premarital pregnancies, but an increase possibly in bundling. And scholars are trying to figure out, well, how exactly does that work? Like, the question is, do you think bundling would lead to fewer pregnancies or more pregnancies?
Yeah.
You think fewer?
I think fewer. Because I think that if you are, I think it really is that we give you an inch so you won't take a mile, because if you're not allowed to bundle and you want to spend time with this person, you have to get married in order to spend time with them. I mean, we still see it happen today, that people who are in cultures where they are not allowed to hold hands with somebody until they are married to them will get married right out of high school.
But don't you think that I think it might even have the opposite effect.
Really?
Though, is if you're already half naked, you've got the stupid knot in your dress. There's really not all that much stopping you from just going all the way. You think it would have been enough?
I think they could have. I think there might have been a little bit more other things. A little bit more finger blasting. That if they are in a space where they are
mutual masturbation is the technical term.
Mutual masturbation, blow jams.
Blow jams.
I've never
heard that one.
But if the whole thing is to keep them from penetrative sex, then parents might turn a blind eye to anything else.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing that is so different about the Renaissance, so wonderful, is I think the word sex for us is so codified in one act, in heterosexual, penetrative, PIV sex. And that is just such a reductive way of defining it today when they weren't bound during the Renaissance by that kind of a definition. So maybe it was enough just to, get a little bump and grind on.
Yeah.
Not necessarily do any penetration because you are half naked with this person, and that's awesome in and of itself.
Yeah.
And maybe not even for now. I wonder if they put penetrative intercourse on the top of the sexual menu hierarchy the way we do today.
I mean, maybe not.
Maybe not.
Maybe they didn't. I mean, because
spoiler alert, they might not have. Not all the time.
Well,
I'm sure it varied from person to person, just like
it does.
Just like fundamentalist kids today, fundamentalist Christians who don't
give up the butt.
Who don't consider anal sex to be intercourse.
Yeah.
Which, they're that kind of.
But it actually is for a lot of people who engage in hetero intercourse before marriage type stuff that. Actually, that's anal is considered top of the this is you need to be more intimate with me.
Yeah, that's going pro. That's
that is going pro.
Voided up.
You have to. There's a build up to that. There's a lead up, and again, for people who engage in a lot of hetero premarital sex, that is you have to be more intimate with your partner in order to attempt that. For the most part, I would say.
Yeah.
Again, doesn't apply to everybody, but.
Commonsensically, discursively, how we talk about anal sex, it is kind of this paragon.
Again, going pro.
Going pro. There's this really quaint reason that some scholars give, and some contemporaries even give, for why bundling was allowed, though. And that's just really practically staying warm. Just staying warm, It's cold outside. We don't have central heating. We don't have gas stoves, all of that.
You want to come over for dinner. You want to eat a big dinner. You'll probably drink. Yeah. You don't want to go back out on your horse after that and ride home and possibly catch a fever. Yep. I mean, how many Jane Austen heroines are catching a goddamn fever because they walked and they rode to some dude's house in the rain?
Yep.
Don't want to fall ill.
Yeah, so there's this really practical reason for sticking around, and there's this, so I have a little snippet of a ballad. It's from a little bit later, but I think ballads, they stretch across time, so this probably
they're still now.
Back. Yeah,
they're still now.
So this is a ballad with a little bit about bundling, saying, "Since in a bed a man and a maid may bundle and be chaste, it does no good to burn out wood, it is a needless waste." we're just saving the trees here.
We're just saving the trees.
Okay, we don't...
Saving wood, saving energy,
labor, saving wood.
Yeah.
Getting wood to save wood. So there is that practical heat that's being produced, but also the heat of sexual energy is getting spent off in another way. While you get warm, you kind of blow off some heat a little bit.
Even if there is like a knot in your skirt, I think that sometimes just the...
Did you say a nut in your skirt?
A knot in your skirt? No, a knot in your skirt.
If there's a knot,
but even just sometimes the reason of like, oh, we're not supposed to. Yeah. I think that that's enough, and sometimes that contributes to the excitement. Yeah. Of like, oh, we're not supposed to do this.
Yeah.
Except
but baby, it's cold outside.
But baby, it's cold outside.
So here's yet another reason why this might have taken up the space culturally that it did, which is the time between getting engaged and getting married was a strange time. Like, it was just an indeterminate space. Yeah. Because back in the day, it's not like today where when you before you get married, you're kind of expected to get engaged. Like, when people don't, there's nothing wrong with it, but we just kind of expect that that's the natural course of events.
Yeah, you get engaged, you plan the wedding,
and then you get married. And when you're engaged, you can kind of like do whatever it is that you want to do.
Yeah.
Like physically with people. Like if you're not doing something sexually with your fiance, then you are making a very conscious choice that we are
to not do that. Yeah.
Yeah, we're saving ourselves. But during the Renaissance, it was actually the opposite expectation when it came to engagements and marriage. So you would definitely get engaged. A betrothal, a spousal. Yeah, but whether or not you actually solemnized it in a church was really up for debate, and people are getting really mad about these clandestine weddings. Clandestine, not even in the sense of being secret, but just not like being witnessed by a lot of people, not being solemnized in church. Yeah. So if you go through all the motions of going through a proposal, it's uttered in the present tense, you exchange some sort of token, there's a witness there, you're basically married, and the way that you seal the deal is with sex. Like, there were two ways to make it official. Either you have sex or you go to the church.
And sex is much easier than going to the church and getting a guy who you might have to pay to say some words. Yeah. And, like, making sure that the church is there for you. I mean, yeah.
But here's the tricky thing, though. Here's the tricky thing. Because you could also get one of these betrothals, but it would be a future betrothal, saying, I promise I will marry you if my parents consent, if I can raise the dowry, if whatever, right? There's this conditional clause, and it's when you have that kind of engagement that you are in this weird indeterminate space. Yeah, because you're like tied to this person. And you know why clandestine marriages were actually allowed, even though the church didn't like them? They recognized them because God is your witness, and they're like, well, we're not going to step on God's toes and say that marriage isn't valid. So if you've made this really serious promise and you're not quite sure if you're going to go through with it, it's actually really... Or if you're waiting for that dowry to happen, if you're waiting for somebody's consent to happen, like, these are really important considerations that would make you want to put off the marriage. If you have sex, like...
Off the table,
it's sealed. And so... Bundling does give you this opportunity to spend off that energy, to get to know this person better without having to take that final serious step.
Exactly. That's kind of nice.
Putting a ring on it. Yeah. It is kind of nice.
Yeah. Well, I feel like we still have future betrothals today. Like, that's still, I feel like there are stages in a serious relationship, and it's why, like, before Dave and I got engaged, Sarah started calling him my... First, she started calling him my life partner, and I was like, that makes it sound like I have a lesbian wife. That's misleading. Yes. And she was like, oh, so I guess I'll just call him your baby daddy, referring to the dog. And so I was like, okay, because she was saying how there needs to be some sort of terminology in between boyfriend, girlfriend, and, like, somebody that you've clearly partnered with. Yeah. You're not married or engaged yet, but you're clearly partnered with them.
Right, and that's what, the word partner, I think, does that work, but I don't like using it because I feel like it's co-opting... Like, that's what gay couples call each other.
Yeah, so it's co-opting, a gay couple's terminology.
Which they had a real need to use. Yeah. And also, like... Not that I care about being read as gay, but I just don't, I don't want to send any sort of signals about what my partnership is like. Yeah. If I don't want to, in a professional setting. So we need a word like partner, but that doesn't have the history.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't think that baby daddy quite does it.
I don't think it quite fills that niche, but there is something in between, and it's difficult to indicate that to other people. Because if you just say, this is my boyfriend, even if you live with them, there's no telling, like,
right.
how long this has been going on, what the state of the relationship is, if you're, like, yeah, there is no way to signal, like, no, this is, like, my person.
Right. Well, and also, if you're, like, 40... I would feel kind of stupid saying, this is my boyfriend.
Exactly, exactly.
A boy. I'm not a girl.
Yeah. There's got to be something else.
Someone should write a think piece about this. Well, I think someone has. I think I read something on Slate about
probably.
how, well, actually, fiancé is what does that.
Yeah.
Especially for people on the lower end of the socioeconomic spectrum is... These are people who probably aren't ever going to get officially married, but they are, like, coupled
They're
up.
coupled, yeah.
And they refer to their partners as fiancés, even though they don't really have any sort of immediate or semi-immediate plans to get married.
Yeah.
I mean, fiancé might do that.
Yeah. Betrothed.
My betrothed. My boo.
My boo. Oh, boo. Or bae.
My bae.
Yeah.
I think of Beyonce.
Yeah, me too.
When it's just B-E-Y, is it pronounced bae or B?
I say bae in my
head.
It
looks like bae, but... It would make sense
to be
B for Beyonce, and they call her Queen Bee.
Queen Bee.
Queen Bey.
Queen Bey. But I think, like, isn't your bae supposed to be... It's not... Like, your bae is, like, short for your babe.
Oh,
or your baby.
Oh, my baby.
Yeah.
See, I like
hey,
boo.
Bae.
This
I like
is my boo.
Like
it's
boo
gender
too.
Neutral.
It's that Usher song.
Yeah, bundling, fascinating, a fascinating phenomenon.
Fascinating.
And what I think is even more interesting, or as interesting, is that scholars don't and can't agree about what extent English people in the 16th through 18th centuries actually engaged in it. Because the word bundling doesn't actually start getting used until, say, the 1800s. So you have to find evidence that describes the practice,
but you can't actually look for the word itself. You can't look for
And there's one scholar who said that the word tarry, like tarrying all night somewhere, that was the transitional word, where tarry would mean just to stay, but that increasingly... As we get into the 1800s, tarry takes on a specifically erotic context that's related to bundling. Yeah.
Well, and I feel like even as early as, like, some of Shakespeare's comedies, you see people, like, you see young couples using that word.
Tarry rash wanton.
Tarry rash wanton. No, but you see, like, yes, you see people using it in that context, in, like, its literal meaning.
Yeah.
But I feel like there are a lot of scenes between lovers.
Well, I think that could be kind of erotic, too.
Yeah, there's scenes between lovers where they're not saying explicitly, like, come sit over here and bone down. Yeah. But they're, like, the scene... I'm thinking specifically of the scene... Boneth down. I'm thinking specifically of the scene between Lysander and Hermia, where he's like... Come lie over here next to me. Come over here next to me. And she's like, no, not right now.
We're just gonna sleep. I swear.
We're just gonna cuddle. I swear.
And I'm pretty sure
he uses the word tarry. But it's in that scene or in a scene similar to that. Yeah. And it's always like a sort of guiding, like, no, stay. Yeah. Why don't you stay? Have one more beer.
I associated a lot with lovers in Shakespeare trying to get their lovers to stay. You want them to tarry. So, then as now, there's clearly this ambiguity about premarital sex, how people do it, how the youths are doing it.
Yeah.
Was it condoned? Was it condemned? And the thing is, kind of the same as it ever was. Kids are gonna do it. And not even just kids. Like, there's all this talk about when you're wooing a widow, you actually have to be more sexual than you normally would be if you were courting a maid, because the widow has gotten some, and she knows what she's missing out on. She is enraged with her lust.
She drives through mountains.
Yeah.
Whatever she's supposed to do.
To get that...
Crosses mountains.
To get that D. And
on a mad search for that D.
So, then as now, we're still concerned with what role physical eroticism plays in courtship. In dating, right?
Yeah.
So, clearly, courting couples are spending the night together, Rolling Stones style, but what exactly that entailed, kind of the same as now.
It's like what?
Whatever.
We
could just do you want to come over and we could just do whatever?
Do whatever. Yada, yada, yada. A little of this, a little of that. Maybe watch a movie.
Just,
it'll be funny. It'll be fun.
What happens. Renaissance hookup culture. It is a scourge. It's a scourge.
Mad chase for that D.
Yep. Ye olde D.
Ye olde D.
That's all for this episode of Rude Tutors, a Fake Geek Girl production. If you like the show, please subscribe and rate us on iTunes. You can follow Nicole on Twitter at Nicole N. Keating and Liz at Laugh and Spin, all one word. You can also check out our other projects, including our brand new web series, Space Happens, on our YouTube channel, Fake Geek Girl Productions, and at our flagship website, thefakegeekgirl.com. Find out more information on supporting this podcast and getting in touch with us in the show notes.
Smellest thou anon?
You're such a dork.